Of very publicly flirting with the idea, billionaire Donald Trump says he really is running for president this time around.
I'll build the greatest wall, and I'll do it under budget and ahead of schedule, and I'll have Mexico pay for it.
Millions march, the huge rallies led by women in Washington, around the country, and around the world. Most demanding President Trump respect their rights and human rights.
Chaos in Charlottesville, Virginia, amid a planned rally by white supremacists to support this Confederate monument. A car plowed into a crowd of counter-protesters.
I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it.
The very latest on the ongoing investigation into the killing and death of George Floyd that has now set off a whole set of motions of protests in the city of Minneapolis.
More protesters swarming the streets of Minneapolis, some clashing with police.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
History in the making, with jury selection beginning in the first criminal trial against Donald Trump.
Count 1, guilty. Count 2, guilty. Count 3, guilty.
A stunning comeback as Donald Trump is elected to become the 47th president.
Crowds gathered in dozens of cities protesting the Trump administration's policies during the No Kings protests. And in Washington, D.C., a military parade attended by President Trump.
So that was 10 years of Trump boiled down to a minute-and-a-half soundbite. Might seem like a minute and a half, it might seem like a lifetime ago, but tomorrow will mark exactly 1 decade since he rode down that famous golden escalator in Trump Tower to announce his candidacy for president. And in that time, quite literally, in everything in this country has changed. Joining us now to discuss everything that has changed is Jake LaHut, senior writer at Wired. Jake, so how do you think Trump has changed politics, or politics have changed Trump in the last decade?
Well, it's funny because I think back to a lot of the things we used to talk about in terms of what to expect after the 2016 election. Everyone thought The Rock is going to run for president. And what about Oprah for 2020? And some of that did turn out to be a little true in terms of a new recognition of the power of celebrity. I kind of think of the period from COVID until maybe 2022-ish to almost be like an accelerant in terms of how Trump became the center of gravity in our politics, how his views in the Republican primaries in any race, congressional, presidential, on down, his endorsement, his pick was going to win. And I think fundamentally, someone at this network, Chris Hayes, wrote a book about this subject, but the attention economy really kind of became the business that we're all in.
It also seems like there was something of a realignment of political coalitions and traditional political cleavages. I don't know whether to credit Trump for that or that's what spawned Trump, but like if you look at who's a Democrat and who's a Republican today, it seems like it's mostly predicted by educational attainment, for example, rather than income or other or even race to some extent. Things that might have been a good heuristic or proxy for the parties in the past.
Totally. And, I think we got a little taste of that with Brexit at the time it happened. But it really is that college, non-college cleavage across Western democracies that has suddenly become the defining feature of whether you're in that right-wing populist party or you're with the, liberal pro-democracy or whatever bucket you want to call it. I mean, it's been 3,286 days since.
Who's counting?
And it is sometimes interesting just to step back and be like, okay, guys, we've been doing this for a decade.
How do you think, and how do you strategize around your reporting? Your team at Wired, you guys have done incredible work around this administration. How are you thinking about this? How do you approach D.C. and Trump at this point?
I think in this iteration of the Republican Party, the emergence of that Silicon Valley wing of the GOP is really interesting, and that's very central to how I do my work. I think for my colleagues at Wired, a lot of it came down to just preparation. I really think that it was a lot of, instead of chasing who might get appointed to what during the transition, it was more about, hey, which federal agencies should we be looking at staffing up with? How might Elon replicate his Twitter playbook in the federal government? And I think that really did happen to a T in a lot of instances. The weird thing about these new Silicon Valley players is this is such a recent development. in this whole 10-year arc. I mean, really, it was Elon coming out and endorsing Trump on the day of the Butler assassination attempt that kind of began to scramble everything. But I do think that, there were those early jarrings loose happening in COVID where a lot of these guys wanted people back in the office right away. They didn't like where, the just tone of the discourse in places like California was going. But I really think that, especially this newsletter that I'm writing at Wired, it's that tension between that Silicon Valley wing of the GOP and these, MAGA populist diehards who have been there since day one, and how are they going to negotiate the rest of this and wherever it goes.
When you look back at these 10 years, and certainly some of the points you talked about, which former President Joe Biden called the arrival of like a tech oligarchy on our doorstep of the body politic, do you think that we have moved in a more democratic or less democratic trend?
I mean, clearly less. Clearly,
maybe
substantially less. Maybe, maybe a little less.
I guess maybe the follow-up would have been like, why specifically, based on the reporting that you're seeing? Because if we're trending in the less direction that overlaps with the 10 years of Donald Trump being in office, then the logical conclusion is he contributed to that less democratic trend.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a frustration in terms of, we got to deal with elections. And I would say a figure that's interesting in this regard is Curtis Yarvin, in this, new reshaping of the GOP and the kind of ideologies that are influencing people in real positions of power here. And
explain what his deal is.
Sure. So Curtis Yarvin's supposition is basically, and this is a figure who is very influential on people like Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, Mark Andreessen, and he has this whole notion of a network state that's basically like everything is kind of run like a company with a CEO, and his sort of how he gets there, to way oversimplify it into a soundbite, is that a libertarian party that would want these kind of things, I mean, would, in his view, have kind of the right politics, that libertarian party couldn't win elections. So what do? You just get rid of elections, and you have more of a kind of board CEO style where whoever's in charge really can do no wrong, because if they're making money, then it's right. And that's a philosophy that I really can't overstate how much that has taken over a lot of the mindset of these Silicon Valley guys who have gotten involved in Republican politics, and how frankly foreign that is even to like your Steve Bannons and, hardcore MAGA people who have been around, and, they've had to play nice a lot of the time. It's only with people like Bannon or your occasional, talk radio host figure who might step out and actually suddenly identify one of these sort of trip points that they're, largely having arguments about behind the scenes.
Really quickly, who has more power? Is it the Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannons, or the tech billionaires in the Republican Party?
Right now, even though all the money is with the Silicon Valley billionaires, I would say if you look at, I would define the base as simply who votes in primaries.
Right.
So I would say it's the MAGA base right now, because they're still determining the outcomes and they're going to follow who Trump picks.
All right, Jake LaHotte, we'll check in with you in another 10 years, if not if not before then. Who knows? Maybe Trump will still be around in our politics 10 years from now. Great to see you, and thanks for joining.